light really brings out the gray. That's scary. Well, because I don't want to dye my hair. I don't want to go back to dyeing my hair. Anyway. So.
Okay, we're live on YouTube also now, and we're live on Zoom.
Okay, and currently I have Clarice, and I have the Petersons, and I have the Mickles. Hello, hello. So I would like to start this informational meeting with a prayer. You will all join me. Dear Lord, occasionally things are brought to us as a congregation and as people of you and your followings that are hard, and we would rather not have to deal with these issues. But that is not your way. That is not the teachings of your Son. And that is not who we are as a congregation. As we talk about the trials and tribulations of our fellow human beings, please allow us to be guided by your words and the Holy Spirit to know what it is that we should do and what it is that you choose for us to do. Amen. I started out with that prayer because when this first was presented to us by the City and Borough of Juneau and St. Vincent de Paul to some extent, my first inclination was, oh, we can't do that. It's kind of like when they shut Juneau down and you couldn't have services. And my first thought was, okay, we're shutting down. But other people gently persuade me, and we discussed it, and when we presented this to the council at the last council meeting, it was a vote of 9-0 that we would submit a proposal and begin the process. Now, that was the first hurdle. The second hurdle is the speed to which we have to deal with this. So we've put in an application for a conditional use permit with the City Planning Department. It will be going to the Planning Commission on the 9th of November. And of course they have the ultimate say whether we get the permit or not. But in the meantime, we can't just twiddle our thumbs and say, well, we'll wait to see what happens, because part of that process is the fact that we need to be up and running by the 15th of November. So it is quite the whirlwind. So I have the proposal here, and it is also available. Is it available on the website, or
multiple places on the website?
Yes, I thought so. So you can go through it if you'd like. If this meeting brings up more questions and comments and concerns, please let us know. You can email me, you can email the office, you can email Pastor Karen.
Better email one of us, because office is monitored graciously by Mike, but not regularly by a secretary.
Okay, so Pastor Karen and or myself, either one, and both is fine too. We want to make sure that everything is addressed so that if and when we open the doors on the 15th of November, that there are no surprises. Knock on wood. This is new to all of us, and this is unfamiliar territory, but as Pastor Karen said in the sermon today, we're going to fling off our cloak and go, well, we will follow you. So, I'm first going to go to individuals online. And let me start with the Petersons. Are you able to get online, and do you have comments to be made or concerns, or you just want to listen?
Hi, it's Grace. I asked you to unmute, but you can't unmute.
Okay, I got it on. You know, I'm just coming, I came to listen.
Okay, thank you very much. And with the Mickles, do you have comments, concerns, things you would like to say, or are you just listening? Anyone's from the Mickles? Okay. If you want to come in at a later time, feel free to. And the same thing with you, Mary Lou. If our discussion brings up any other questions, you know, please let us know, because I don't want this to be the one and only chance you have to give comments.
Okay.
Is that Linda? Oh, that was Mary Lou? Okay.
Yep, that was very good.
Oh, you and Linda kind of
My
sound.
mute comes on and then disappears, I don't know.
Okay. And then Clarice, do we have anybody that has been on the chat?
I haven't talked on YouTube, and no replies back, but there are people watching the chat.
But nobody's entered anything in yet?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay.
Karen,
Yes.
can I share,
Karen, can you turn your microphone back on?
Yeah, turn your
I think
microphone
you turned
on.
off your.
Okay.
so I received an email from,
Linnea Osborne. I won't read the whole email, but she thought that it was
Can you
not.
also take your mask off because you're muffled?
Sorry. She did not think it was a good decision, and was very concerned about our neighbors, specifically the children, the proximity to school, and any elderly people in the neighborhood, and possible risk to them. And so I wanted to, first of all, thank Linnea for sending this and acknowledge it. And then if we could address what we think we can do about that. So would you like to,
Yes.
I'm just saying thank you, Linnea, if you're listening or watching, and then Karen.
This, of course, a lot of the concerns with regards to children and the elderly and the neighborhood were brought up once before, so it was something that we had heard in the past when the city was holding their meetings on whether they were going to purchase a permanent shelter, and one of the proposals was the Bill Ray Center. And so there was that concern. So we knew that that was an issue and a concern. So when we were looking at the proposal and thinking how we were going to do it, I don't know if anybody knows, I mean, some of us know, but we have cameras all around the church. And so that has been helpful in the case when, you know, we've had someone maybe try to open the door, or especially—
Zero incidents since last January.
Zero incidents, yeah. Or it helped when the kids the safe space for school, kids were downstairs, that they could know who was at the door and everything. So we would be providing more security as far as cameras and lighting throughout this. The other part to that is the fact that this will have staff. It's part of the contract that we will have paid staff, and those individuals will be monitoring the outside. We are going to be meeting with the police department as well as the fire department to make sure that they understand what we have and what they can do to assist us in this. Of course, they're very supportive with regards to making sure that there's a cold weather shelter.
And in the past, JPD came every morning to help ensure that the patrons, to help people leave and to help ensure patrons left the property and didn't congregate at the property. So because that was the pattern in the past, I'm assuming that if we ask, they'll do that again. And because I want to acknowledge, by the way, some of these objections, and specifically Linnea said, it's not about thinking they're bad people or anything like that. It's a matter of how do we make sure that we're good neighbors. So that's one of the ways, is to make sure that there's no overlap between the patrons that are staying here, you know, out of the cold. They leave the building and they can take the bus or whatever transportation tool they're going during the day.
Yes. And the hours, the minimum hours of operation is from 11 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. So if we are able, and people are able to transition out, that's well before schools and elderly people might be out and about. So that is what we're working on with regards to safety, both for our building and as well as the neighborhood and the kids and elderly that also reside in the neighborhood.
And the cleaning, we'll have the professional cleaning regularly so that it's sanitary, but also keeping, making sure that around the church there's no litter, so that litter and debris don't accumulate on the property, and that's a daily check.
Yes. So, with that in mind, I will open it up to questions, comments, concerns amongst you. Or even if you just want to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's okay too. I'd like to start with some.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do have one from when it's turn. I have an online one from Clarice.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I know some shelters down south provide food, either dinner or breakfast for you. Is that something that's required?
It is. Not, well,
Is everyone's contract to answer that one?
you may answer that.
So the contract does not require food. That having, when we operated the shelter, we learned that.
Please repeat the question.
Oh,
Yes.
the question is regarding food, an evening meal and breakfast.
So the question was, does
Also, Dad, you were very low on your mic. Keep it up, please.
Yep, I'll turn my mic up and sit a little closer to my mic. Hang on.
Clarice, you're very loud, so it evens out.
Oh, no, my mic is.
We can hear you from California.
My mic is turned off, which is.
There you go.
Whoever's running the
The
soundboard.
short version is, Loretta, it's not required in the contract, but we find that people sleep better if you give them food when they first come in, and if you give them food when they get up, and coffee, they get up and out, and it's easier for people to have a good day.
So
Yeah.
it is going to be a part of our program.
Yeah, so
For
let
lack
me-
of a better
can I
term.
elaborate a little bit on that also, is that we there's levels of service among the shelters in town, and so we provide a simple dinner as opposed to a more complete dinner like the Glory Hall. So we provide a one entree dinner like soup, chili, or taco night. We don't give a variety of foods, and breakfast is usually oatmeal in a cup on the way out the door with coffee or a hot chocolate and orange juice.
So Clarice says, also, bread loves feeding people, which is true.
Oh my God, no, that's not true.
But-
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And the other question that Clarice had was that the professional cleaning was, we're not asking Earl to do that. We're actually hiring, as part of the contract, professional cleaners.
Yes, and also we will, part of the contract will be for laundry services.
Yeah,
So
across the street.
across the street is very nice because,
And they were the ones who did it they're the ones who have been done it from the very beginning when I contracted for them when it was over at the Public Safety Building and then at St. Vincent de Paul, and they did it all the time it was at the Jack.
that answered your question?
Oh, and
I mean, we're Lutherans.
we're Lutherans, yeah.
It involves food and coffee.
Right, and Randy is going to be helping me with getting the kitchen when he gets back from his vacation. He's going to be helping me with getting the kitchen certified, recertified since the last time it was when we did the daycare, and also with getting the commercial equipment we need to do this service.
Yes.
Which will help us as a congregation, because that can some of that can be supported by the contract. As by the way, some of the work that I can do for the program, including training and supervising, will be hours that will be supported by the contract, and then will be paid to the congregation. So it'll what's the word? Support my salary here.
Supplant?
Whatever the
Subsidize.
word. Well, not supplement. I don't get extra from it. The church then, yeah.
As Jared said, it ameliorates the.
Oh, there you go, Jared.
It's good for-
Yeah.
Also, if people want to help volunteer, we can't cook at home because of our food policies here at the church, but you can cook in the kitchen downstairs. What we do is, we learn to do this, is we cook during the day or afternoon, and then we either freeze or we refrigerate the food, and then the food is then put on, getting warmed up in the evening, so when the shelter staff gets here, it's ready to go into the steam tables. Because the food has to be held for, people come in, people trickle in, they don't all show up at the same time. So because we don't ask the staff to cook.
And much like other things, we use pantry food.
Oh,
So the food that was used for safe space for schooling was weighed and separated out for safe space for schooling, but it was provided by the food pantry. And
Food bank.
Food bank. I'm sorry, food bank.
Food pantry.
So we get the ingredients for the food from the food bank.
Just like the Glory Hall does.
Yes. So the other thing that is, when we were discussing this and the possibility of it, there is an unknown, only because the Glory Hall has now increased its capacity, and so they are actually able to service more people in their setup and everything. So the question was, about how many did we think that we would be able to serve? Because we have space limitations downstairs. So when we said that we thought between no more than 25 to 28, the city and St. Vincent de Paul thought that that was a good estimate. That would be the maximum. Normally, they usually, well, I can't say usually because they got into the whole pandemic and open,
And that's socially
and they were-
distanced
yeah.
spacing.
Yes, the socially distanced spacing. And when they were opening and operating year-round because of the COVID, those numbers were higher. So they felt that that was a good estimate as far as maximum people. So we don't know how many people it's going to be. I pray every day that we don't ever have to turn somebody away. I mean, that would break my heart, but they felt that that was a good estimate.
We will also, if we get to maximum, we'll be calling the other shelters and trying to find places for people that, you know, when someone comes to the door, we're not going to lock the door and say, watch them freeze outside.
No.
We will also be looking, when people show up, we're going to be looking to see if they belong somewhere else. We'll be coordinating with all the shelters to make sure that people that show up don't already have a place at some other shelter, because we don't want to duplicate services, and we don't want to shelter somebody we know is staying, should be at the Housing First or at the Glory Hall or at a Ware or belong at St. Vincent in the transitional housing facility.
Yeah, I learned a new term yesterday. Brad used shelter shopping.
Yeah.
That we just can't support that because it duplicates services. So we will work with the other shelters to check. I mean, the thing is, you can't ensure every single person is never duplicated anywhere, because then you run the risk of leaving somebody out in the cold. But for the most part, as long as you keep track, you can cut those numbers down to almost nothing.
And the other shelters have money for cabs, or they have buses, or they have whatever, to make sure that they'll get their people back each night, so that we don't. And that's especially true since we're downtown where the bars are, and you can definitely see somebody, you know, having a good time and saying, I'm going to stay at Resurrection tonight.
Yeah. We say, no, you're not. You're going to go back to wherever.
Question.
Yes.
I'm interested as to how many shelters we have. It's just St. Vincent de Paul, I guess, is the only one I know about.
The
Do we
cold.
have other shelters in town?
Well, as far as the other shelters in town, the Glory Hall, as well as Housing First, well, I
Well,
wouldn't
it depends
consider
on what you're
Housing
talking about.
First,
So,
yes.
so St. Vincent de Paul has a transitional shelter,
Correct.
which is up to 2 years. Then there's the Glory Hall, which is, you know, daily up to whatever their limit is. Aware is daily up to whatever their limit is. Housing First, I'm not, or what is it?
There's 64 of them.
Forget Me Not Manor, yeah, I'm not sure exactly theirs. And then a Family Promise is a sheltering program that you get in the program, and that's not an exact limit. The average is 6 months. So you know, in terms of sheltering programs, those are the ones that I'm aware of. There are different parameters.
And there's also programs that people have rapid rehousing programs where people are in hotel rooms.
Yes.
And so there's all kinds of different programs in town. And actually, Jamie has different programs where they'll put people in different situations either. And so it's very complicated, all the programs are.
I don't know if people can still not hear you, Brad. I'm having trouble hearing you, so I'm going to repeat that for those of you who are at home, especially, is that there are rapid rehousing programs, or Jamie has programs where people are put in hotels, and programs like that. So different organizations are managing programs and then cooperating to shelter people at different levels of care. This is called the lowest barrier or lowest threshold, meaning last resort. As long as you're not dangerous or so disruptive that other people can't sleep, you can stay here. Whereas most other places have other requirements in order to stay there.
Question, did we not have people staying in our basement for shelter first for, maybe this was 2 or 3 years ago, or I can't remember now, but I thought we had that program, but I guess we don't anymore.
We're still part of Family Promise, and Family Promise during the pandemic had to go to staying at one church. So it was at, was it Calvary
They're down by
Chapel?
Chapel by the Lake.
Chapel by the Lake. I always mix those two up. Anyways, Chapel by the Lake. And now, I'm not sure where they are. They wanted to start up again, but the Delta variant, I mean, they wanted to start again in October, but the Delta variant postponed it again. What will happen is if we get the conditional use permit and end up having this program here, we'll tell them, because we end up taking, 8 weeks a year? We'll tell them that our 8 weeks cannot be until after April 15th. And so once Family Promise starts rotating to different churches again and putting together a schedule, they'll know that we're open after April 15th.
Yes.
Another question, I peeked downstairs when I was there during the book club. I noticed the walls are all painted, looks nice, new flooring. What has changed in our bathrooms? I remember so often we had problems with our bathrooms. Is that completely solved now?
That's a good question.
That's a real, should we knock on wood on that? I mean, we don't know if it's going to be able to handle a lot, 20 people all at once. That's a very good question. However, we've thought about it. We will include monies in the budget as part of this proposal,
Contract, yeah.
that it will make sure that we have maintenance and on-call people, and we can deal with the situation as is.
The bathrooms have been used more regularly since we've had Safe
Yes.
Space for Schooling, and we've had the Montessori home tutoring program's been down there, so they've been used, they were used more regularly, but that's not the same as this group, which will be, a little larger.
Right, so
we haven't reinforced them yet, but we will include money for that. We will only be using the bathrooms downstairs. There won't be any use of the third floor for the warming shelter.
yes, so it will be just down in the bathroom, or down in the basement,
First floor.
and those.
Another question too, I remember when they had that shelter, when it first started, in that state office building, it was condemned and it's no longer there. There was a need for somebody to spend the night there every night.
Yes,
That wasn't, is that, somebody's gonna be spending the night in
Yes.
downstairs or?
yes, we will have staff hired that will be required to be there, awake,
Yeah, two minimum paid staff.
yes.
And the way, at least the way I've done it before when I've done work in shelters, is pretty well trained for this level of shelter, because the more awake and engaged people are, the more problems are prevented. So well trained and engaged staff, but a minimum 2 every night.
You're talking about the budget, this comes from our church budget, or do we have a grant from somebody to do all this?
No, what this is the city had contracted with St. Vincent de Paul, and it is, they had a yearly budget. And so, contract, sorry, not a contract, yeah. And so it will be coming from the city, and it will not utilize the church budget. It's a separate contract with the city.
And the contracted amount is a flat rate. So they contract with us, and then whatever we spend it on for the program, we spend it on, and that's the end of it. We don't say, oh, well, for this many nights this, or we did this with it, and that's how it applies to the program. It's a flat rate, which subsidizes the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Is how, and that's partially what it's not that we don't keep records. We'll keep records of who's doing what, but the city gives us the contract and pays the congregation, and then we pay for whatever it costs to run it.
Yes, the contract has set minimums, And like I said, so we have to be open November 15th to April 15th. On days when the predicted temperature, as determined by the prior day at 6 p.m., is going to fall below 32 degrees, and that we are open from minimum 11 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Those are the parameters of the contract minimums.
The cots are provided by the city,
Yes.
the blankets are provided by the city, though we have to pay to clean them. St. Vincent de Paul had a lot of bins for people sometimes had stuff that they left, and so they'll give us their bins and give or loan us a lot of the stuff that Brad got for the kitchen when it was there. So those kind of tools are either provided by the city or included in the contract. And then something that's a yay is the extra pews that we're not currently using upstairs that are downstairs. The city is going to store for us in a warehouse if this goes through, so that space will be opened up and the city will be storing our pews.
Yes.
So there's gonna be cots down there, or air mattresses, or what?
Cots.
They're
FEMA.
cots.
They're like the first aid.
No, they're the FEMA cots.
FEMA.
Yeah.
cots.
I don't know if you've ever seen when the Red Cross has to mobilize those cots. So, and the blankets and all those things, but we have to maintain them, but they will be giving us those. Did you have another question, Mary Lou?
No.
Okay. Miranda, where are we going to find staff?
So I can answer that.
Yes.
St. Vincent's given us the leads on staff from last year, as well as inquiries they've already had inquiries. We've already started receiving names, but that's a very good question. We are concerned about that. There's not, this is a very hard time to hire people. And so we're going to have to pay a pretty, they paid last year $18 an hour. I'm guessing we're going to have to go 19 to 20 to get this. There are people who like this kind of late night work, plus we're going to they all get about 20 hours of training, and so people like getting all that training. Karen and I have done this training before, and so we're, it's going to,
Some of those people for St. Vincent Paul indicated that they'd like to come back because they do seasonal work, and so when they're not doing summer work, they like doing the winter work. If you know people who are interested, let us know, because in the beginning, there's a fairly high attrition rate. Some people like the idea of doing this and then find out that they are just not physically able to work all night and stay awake all night. So the truth is we'll probably have to hire a couple more people in December. If you know people who are interested, let us know.
And this also, for a lot of people, is a second job, because
Yeah.
they don't,
Yes.
it's also not necessarily steady work, because, depending what the weather's like, we could be open and then we can be closed for a couple weeks and things like that.
Yeah.
But according to El Nino, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
Bob, I was going to say, you can talk as to El Nino. Are there going to be liability issues?
So, but he's asked me that question before. And
Yes.
so I will answer that. If there's an increase to our insurance policy, the city will pay for
Yes.
that. Is there a potential liability for being sued? There'll be a contract, in our insurance policy, this will be covered. The city will indemnify us for beyond that, because this is a function of the government, and so the fact is it falls under the government. The government can't be sued for liability, because we're actually, from this is the city's providing this shelter service. They're providing it through us as the contractor. So this is
Right.
actually the only shelter. The city of Bureau of Juneau doesn't do any of these things. They do it all through the Juneau Community Foundation, except this. So this is the only thing they decide to do that's not through the Juneau Community Foundation. So far, there's never been a suit in the 5 years they've been running it.
Yes. Bob.
The upstairs is going to be isolated for
Correct. Correct.
By either a locked door or if it's a fire issue, which the fire marshal said no, is that there'll be an alarmed door?
Yes.
Yeah, the fire marshal said no, because that door downstairs and that door are both emergency exits. So we can lock, we can,
Right.
Well,
But
so
we can alarm. Right.
right. Right.
But we can alarm them. Yes.
And that's why I did St. Vincent. I had those little alarm boxes.
Yeah.
You push on the door and it goes off. And there's awake staff, 2 awake staff all the time.
Do I have any other? I see Laura put half a hand up.
If you haven't read Laura's Living and Growing, I invite you to do that. I personally am hopeful about this. I think it'll be good for us. I mean, assuming I'm going to just operate as if it's going to happen. So if it happens, I think it'll be good for us. So I'm grateful that
Would you like
I wasn't grateful when it first came up, I gotta tell you. I really wasn't. But I'm grateful that the council was more positive than I was, and I think it's gonna be a good thing.
I am now going to I'm going to give Laura a microphone. I'd even give you a podium if I could. You want a podium?
Not so much.
Did it shut off?
I do radio.
Can you turn that one on?
That's right.
Are you sure? Okay.
I didn't hear it.
Okay, I would like for you all to refer.
Rob, we're hearing something and somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm not trying to figure out where that is. Hang on. Oh, it's on Zoom.
Like,
Yeah, we're getting the sound.
Somebody on Zoom,
Needs to
double check
mute.
your mic.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
okay. When I heard of this shelter, the warming shelter possibly being here, I'm just 100% for that. I have personal reasons for that, and that's why I wrote this article. It's called Seeking Justice for People Experiencing Homelessness. It's on the Faith page in Friday's paper, and I encourage everybody to read it. As you know, well, not everybody knows, but our daughter Tanya was chronically homeless, and we spent 3 decades from the time she was, I don't know, in her late, I suppose, teens to till the time she died, trying to keep her in a safe place and keep her safe, which was really difficult. But she had lots of difficulties, and this article tells you some of the complications. And she, many of you know her, and she died because of homelessness. Homelessness is very dangerous. She didn't want to be homeless, but she was so severely brain damaged and disabled that she was one of the least of the least, and she was one of them that really needed a warming shelter. And most of the time she couldn't find a warming shelter, or there was no place for her. And so she would go into stores and pick something up to steal it, and then she'd go up to the people at the store and she says, "Will you call the police if I steal this?" So that she could be arrested and be in jail for warmth. Or she would go lay down illegally in front of some doorstep so that the police would be called and she would be arrested so that she could survive. And that's why this warming shelter is so very important, because we loved her so much and it was so hard on us. It took a lot out of us, and it somewhere out there, there's always somebody who loves the person who needs the warming shelter. And I hope none of you ever have had to experience this, but we experienced it for 3 decades, and we're still possibly experiencing it again. So I just want to put that out there for you.
Thank you, Laura. And a lot of us did know Tanya, and she was the sweetest person. And I know she was truly, truly loved. But that doesn't help when it's 32 degrees below up in Anchorage. So the other, as she was talking about that, the other thing that came to mind for me was the fact that Anchorage, just as this was coming about, Anchorage had done a study of people that they had found deceased on the streets, and they had done, I don't know if they had done full autopsies, but they had done analysis.
Cause of death analysis.
Yes, and the cause of death was hypothermia. So it is an issue. And as I was saying yesterday, you know, God's work our hands. Lucy.
I'll just say something as a council member. When this was brought up, we kind of looked at each other and said, nobody else is stepping forward, and we have to make it happen. It was a difficult discussion, but an easy decision.
Oh, I like that. A difficult discussion, easy decision.
That is eloquent. I like it.
That is, yeah, because that's what it was. So do I have any other comments, questions, concerns? If this has brought up comments, questions, and concerns that you don't want to share amongst the group here, like I said, you can email me. You can also email Pastor Karen. And we will definitely look at comments, questions, and concerns.
And we wanted everybody, I mean, among other reasons,
Yes.
we wanted everybody to be informed so that if you encounter people who say, is that your church doing this? And you can be informed about what's going on and address, you know, anything that they bring up about it, as much as anything.
yes,
Yes, it's your church.
you know, I kind of, when it came up, you know, I liked my typical reflex action being a Lutheran, change. So I had to do a lot of thinking and praying, and yeah, God and I had a lot of discussions and tape measures so we could figure out how to do this.
Should we pray before we go home?
Oh, Laura
I'm
has
sorry.
something else she wants to say.
I think it's important to understand that homelessness puts us way beyond our comfort zone. And it requires, but God requires us to reach out to the homeless. That is what God's will is for us. And I had before Tanya became ill, I mean, Larry and I had, you know, there were all these myths about homelessness or mental illness and all of that. Well, Tanya wiped away all those myths for us. And she actually made us feel comfortable around the people who were homeless, because we were surrounded by homeless people a lot. And so you know, it's just a matter of going beyond your comfort zone. And it's God's call.
On On a little lighter note, Clarice texted and asked, will Corbin be working at the warming shelter? And Corbin, as a puppy, did work at the St. Vincent warming shelter for a while, and so he does know.
Yes, he will.
And so the answer is he will sometimes. So that you know, a lot of the patrons, Karen and I still remember and know them from when we were running it before I left St. Vincent, and Karen and I left St. Vincent. But also a lot of them are our food pantry patrons, and so we already know them. They already come here and leave. They come get food and then they leave. So Corbin knows them too.
Yes. We have quite a few that would come in to use the food pantry who've been at the campground.
Yeah.
So.
Which just closed.
Closed on the 15th.
Yeah.
So a lot of them would come in and they are great friends of ours.
Friends of ours, and a lot of them relate really well to the dog because it's a contact and a comfort.
So
shall we? I'm sorry.
We may close in prayer.
Let's just stand as you are able and pray the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you, everybody, for staying.
I want to thank everybody that stayed. I want to say thank you, Mary Lou, and to the Mickles, and as always, Clarice. It's so nice to hear your voice.
And Karen, thank you.
And thank the tech crew for working this.
Yes, and the
Tech crew.
And we are doing this again at 6 with the Juneau String Ensembles.
Yes.
Parents in a group that wanted one for them to talk after their rehearsal today. So we're, yeah, Karen, you can zoom into that one.
And I plan on being here.
Thank you, that'd be great, because I promised
Yes,
them
at
that
6.
more than me would be here today.
Yeah, I plan to be here at 6. And then, of course, there's the meeting at 7 o'clock on Wednesday,
Yes, thank you.
Zoom as well as in person.
Yeah, so we can leave the cameras on other than 4 or 5.